All right. I'm pleased to be joined by David Wood, president of Ancoats Construction Company right here in Minneapolis North Loop area. I'm Brian Johnson, a reporter with Finance and Commerce newspaper. David, how are you doing today?
I'm doing well, Brian. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, for sure. I was wondering, David, if you could want to talk specifically about some of the projects you're doing and maybe get your thoughts on the construction sector. But if you have a few minutes, I wonder if you could tell us a little bit about your business and how you got into the construction business. It looks like you spent a number of years with Mortenson, where you started out as an intern and worked all the way up to a market sector leader. Um, Tell me about that and how you how a little bit more about your construction journey and how you started Ancoats.
Yeah, sure. Well, I had started as a young age. My dad, John Wood, spent his career in the construction industry. So,
Mhm.
you know, back when I was a kid, I was effectively immersed in the business, whether that was touring job sites, or, when he'd go in on a Saturday morning to get caught up playing hide and seek in the hallways at the office, and so I was always surrounded by it, and chose that it was the career for me. I ultimately went to college for engineering. I got my degree in construction engineering and got involved with Mortenson as an intern, as you mentioned, during school, and then started my career full time for Mortenson out in Denver. Um, so I did spend 10 years with Mortenson, which was an unbelievable place, to cut my teeth and learn what it meant to be a strong builder. I look back incredibly fondly on the times that I spent with the company. And yeah, ultimately, back in 2020, chose to embark on my own journey to start Ancoats.
Yeah, that's cool. I guess I didn't know that John Wood is your father. I remember John Wood very well, talking to him many times about projects, touring US Bank Stadium project site with him, and so that's very cool. How's he doing?
He's doing well. He and my mom both are doing great. My dad is still involved with the business, with Mortenson, that is, in some capacity.
Hmm.
Obviously, when he spent over 40 years of his career with them. He had an unbelievable career, of course, as you know. And there's many landmarks in this town and across the country, for that matter, that have his thumbprint on it. And so, for me, being surrounded by that, it was hard not to be inspired, by his journey, and
Hmm.
what the business, what he was able to contribute to the business, and frankly, what the business was able to give back to him. So. It was arguably inevitable that I was going to end up, working in construction.
Yeah, as I recall, he was, and I'm sure still is, a big Manchester United fan.
That's right.
Which kind of explains how you got your company's name. I understand that Ancoats is a district in Manchester. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. So, my dad is born and raised in Manchester, England, and um, so you're right. Ancoats is a small district of Manchester. His parents, so my grandparents and my great grandparents were born and raised in Ancoats. And so that's sort of the short story as to where the name came from. However, the longer version is Ancoats during the Industrial Revolution, despite being, this small town, in a small country in the middle of the Atlantic, became an important part along the supply chain during the Industrial Revolution because of the innovations in manufacturing equipment that they developed and implemented. in Ancoats. And so symbolically, a small, hardworking, very blue collar community to emerge as this incredibly influential place during a transformative period, of global change, was deeply meaningful to me. And so there are uh, a lot of characteristics of that of Ancoats and what it represents that we as a company are trying to live by. And so that's ultimately the reason why I chose to name the company after Ancoats.
And so tell us a little bit more about your company. What types of projects do you typically pursue and where?
Yeah. So I may answer that by sharing the vision for the company was one that was established after, as I mentioned, I started my career in Denver. After working there for 6, 7 years, moved back. I grew up here, moved back to Minneapolis, and then worked in the Twin Cities market for a handful of years. What I had observed in that period was that I felt the mid-market project is, I guess, how I would characterize it. So a project that might be $5 million to $25 million wasn't adequately addressed by the players in this market. Projects that sort of fell into that spectrum felt like they were either too small to get an appropriate amount of attention from a larger firm and might be too big or complex for the smaller construction companies that operated in our market. And so the vision for the business was to try to effectively approach that market, the mid-market project, and in some cases, larger projects, be able to execute those projects with the same sophistication that a large company might be able to do. Obviously, with the experience from where I came from, I wanted to ensure that those same projects could be executed with the same level of precision, but with a little bit more flexibility and agility that a smaller, more boutique firm could offer. And so that was the premise of the business back in 2020. And so to answer your question, in terms of the projects we're pursuing or executing, most of them sort of fall in that spectrum. Currently, some of the larger things we have going on would include the second phase of a North American campus for a company called SICK in Bloomington in the South Loop. SICK, who've been an unbelievable client of ours, are a German headquartered photoelectric sensor manufacturing business. So we're building a 150,000 square foot office resource center for them right now. That broke ground a couple months ago. We are also building a 550 stall parking structure for the city of Bloomington. We continue for the last 2 years or so, we've done a number of projects for Boston Scientific. I would say over the 4 years that we've been in business, about 80% of our work falls into either the category of corporate or life sciences. And so most of our work, 50 plus projects, have ended up in those two markets. Other work we do include some work for nonprofits. We've done a couple of restaurant projects, some sports work. As we grow and evolve, from being a small startup company into a more mature, established business with an actual market position in the Twin Cities, we are currently focusing on what other markets do we expand into. Our first sort of strategic growth opportunity is market sector expansion, and so we're currently evaluating the other markets we feel like we can contribute to and have good strategic alignment with what we can offer.
Okay, so pretty wide range of projects from some pretty small stuff all the way up to the SICK project, which is what $64 million project or something like that.
Yeah, the current phase we're working on is about 57 million.
Okay, and that's right over there by the Mall of America, I believe. Is that right?
That's right. Yep, it's just east of the mall. We did phase one, which was about 150,000 square foot manufacturing and office building that was completed in the middle of 2021. This new phase is actually going to be Skyway connected to that building, but over there in the South Loop, yes.
Mm-hmm. Um, can you talk a little bit about uh, what's in your pipeline, and do you see yourself continuing to stay busy in the coming months?
Yeah, we're blessed to have some wonderful opportunities in front of us, both with the clients that I mentioned, um, and others. Most of the opportunities in front of us, because of where we've been spending the majority of our time here these last couple of years, I'd say fall predominantly in the science and tech space, or life sciences. And because of the fact most of our clients are owner-occupant based clients who don't generally utilize the debt market to find capital for their projects, we are relatively insulated from the current interest rate environment and headwinds facing, developer-based work. But it certainly affects us, right? High interest rates have implications to corporations just as they do anybody else. And so, in spite of that, there's still great activity in our market. Obviously, with some of the larger projects that are taking place, that were absent for 2 or 3 years during and immediately after COVID, those have returned. And we certainly feel that in the types of projects that we're pursuing as well.
So you're primarily a builder, and do you get into the development business at all, or is that something that you're interested in?
We don't currently do any development work. Um, from a growth perspective as we move forward, our first strategic growth objective is market sector expansion, as I mentioned before.
Mhm.
I would say objective number one was just establishing our footing as a builder. We feel very good about where we sit today. So market sector expansion, I think, is next. I would say in 2 to 3 years, other business service expansion, diversifying the ways that we integrate our pipeline is probably next. That could look like development work. We don't currently self-perform work, so we could choose to take on self-perform craft labor. Or there's a possibility we could choose to make a strategic acquisition of another business that we think is value added to us or helps us, differentiate ourselves in this market. And so those aren't at the forefront, I would say, Brian. But certainly they're tepid conversations we have now that certainly will get some momentum in the years to come.
Mhm. Now, how many employees do you currently have?
Employee number 15 starts on Monday of next week, and employee number 16 starts later in September.
Okay, awesome. Well, we're hearing more, starting to hear chatter again about the labor challenge in construction, just the challenge to find construction labor. Is that, do you have any thoughts on that or any other opportunities and challenges out there in the construction sector? We talked a little bit too about interest rates, and hopefully it looks like the Fed might be lowering interest rates here in September. But what's your big picture assessment of where we're headed with the construction sector?
The labor thing is definitely still a thing. Obviously, there's been talk in the market about the challenges with finding skilled uh, skilled labor across the industry, across the country for years. That's definitely still a problem. I would say we saw recent very positive news out of Wisconsin last week. I can't remember, it might have even been published by you guys. Um, that Associated Builders and Contractors in the state of Wisconsin recently indicated that their apprenticeship class in 2024 is the highest ever recorded, which obviously is tremendously positive news. Hopefully, that's not an isolated instance and rather the beginning of a trend. Further upstream in terms of where we see enrollment in the trade schools, those have been, very slowly increasing over the recent years, which obviously is a very positive signal. I think there's some the cautious optimism about where the labor pool could be headed. It is definitely still one of, if not the biggest issues facing our industry. Um, yeah, the interest rates, of course, is impacting new development and construction. To your point, we'll see what the second, or I should say, the second half, or at least the fourth quarter of this year, what happens at the federal level with interest rates and how quickly some of the capital gets infused back into the market.
Yeah, for sure. So any other thoughts before I let you go on just either on the construction market in general or any particular opportunities that your company's pursuing?
I would say one thing that's been uh, an area we've been spending a lot of time in, and I think when we're having conversations with clients, it becomes a more common conversation is around sustainability. And obviously, with the Inflation Reduction Act that was passed recently, there is other incentives available to projects to take advantage of subsidies or tax credits as it relates to investing in green energy or responsible um, attributes of projects as it relates to the environment. In terms of conversations we have, it's either for new construction, finding unique ways by which a project or a building or its systems can be, as environmentally responsible as possible. In other instances, we're having clients who have existing assets trying to strategize ways by which they can either electrify or decarbonize their existing assets. And so I feel very good about some of the work we've been able to do in that specific sphere, and frankly, where the market appears to be headed in that direction. So opportunities moving forward, I imagine for us in particular, could be largely focused in that arena.
Yeah, great. Well, thank you so much for your time, David. Good luck with your projects. Nice chatting with you. Hopefully, we can stay in touch
Yeah,
and say hello to your father for me.
I will. Yeah. Thanks, Brian. It was a pleasure meeting you, and I appreciate you taking the time to do this.
Likewise. Have a good day.
All right. Take care.
Thank you.